Hello, thanks for joining me today. This is Jeanette. I have a new fall themed card to share with you today, and it features the background stamp from Whimsy, which is called Delightful Daisies. Now, even though they're supposed to be daisies, I thought they looked like chrysanthemums, so I thought they would make a beautiful fall card. So I'm going to take you through how I created this. This is a background stamp. You can see it's a beautiful 6x6 size. And I'm going to be using my Misty to stamp it. So I have some Bristol cardstock here, and I'm going to be using my Misty. I had to remember to remove that foam piece from behind the Misty. That's there if you need to stamp clear stamps, but when you're stamping rubber, you don't need it. I used my anti-static tool there on the paper, and now I'm going to be inking up the background stamp with some Versamark. And I'm just going to go over that quite firmly to make sure I get a really nice impression. Now you can't see the lines here, but as soon as I start using this embossing powder, like magic, you're going to see them appear. Usually when I emboss, I like to use white or black, but I thought because I was using fall colors, the gold would look really pretty. So that's why I'm using the gold. And you can see I'm sprinkling it onto the cardstock and it's falling into that coffee filter. And then I can just simply pour it right back into the jar and throw away the coffee filter because they're not very expensive. And it's a great way of keeping your work surface nice and clean. So now I'm going to be using my heat tool to melt the embossing powder. You probably can't really pick it up on the video, but as the embossing powder melts, it changes color. It turns lighter and it turns that beautiful, luxurious gold color. And that's how you know that you've melted all the powder. You really want to make sure at this step to really go over the image well, because if the powder's not melted, it will come off. Now I'm going to be coloring up the image with Zig Real Brush Clean Color markers. That's why I use the Bristol cardstock, because I find this cardstock and these markers give the best results. Now the marker numbers and names are going to be across the screen here as I'm using them. For the center, I used these three colors, and I used them for all the centers. And I didn't use any water. I wanted them to be quite deep, quite dark. So I just blended them with each other. So I laid down the dark color, blended with the mid-tone, and then finished the blend with the lightest marker. So once they were all done, I was able to move to the actual flowers. And you can see there at the bottom of my paper, I was playing around with the markers that I had to try to find really nice combinations together. I wanted those beautiful fall colors, the bright sort of robust yellows and those gorgeous sort of crimsons and oranges. I wanted to get those colors onto the flower. So I just played around with my markers until I found the ones that gave me the best sort of look. I'm always laying down my darker marker, and I always lay it down in the areas where I want the most shading. And then I take the lighter marker, or the second marker, and I blend away at those edges. And then instead of using a third marker, I complete the blend with some water. I really love how the water makes the petals look a little bit more transparent, a little bit less opaque. And it's for that reason I like to make the centers with no water and then the petals with water. It just gives a nice contrast. Now, I am not, an expert at watercoloring at all, but I really find that this combination of paper, markers, the brush I'm using, which I will link below, all of these sort of combine and contribute to me being able to get a pretty nice look with the watercoloring. So I find this a very relaxing sort of crafting thing to do, just watercoloring. In fact, when I was doing this, I actually had people coming into my craft room, as they will do, and just, sitting and talking, and I was able just to continue with my project and join in the conversation. So it's a really relaxing sort of thing to do. So I finished that first flower. I'm going to move on now to my a second flower, you can see that I'm not coloring the flower right up against the one I just colored. And that's because I don't want to take a chance of any of the colors sort of bleeding into each other. Now, with the embossing, it actually creates a sort of raised edge, so you are able to minimize color bleeding because there's that sort of, it's sort of like a barrier that stops the ink and the water from running into the next image, but you still have to be a little bit careful. Now you can see for this this one, I've gone slightly more brown in color, and using maybe a little bit more water. You can see as soon as I add that water, it really lightens up the whole edge of the petal. And this is very forgiving because the flowers don't all have to be exactly the same. In fact, I think it looks better if they're all quite different and not exactly the same shade or tone. It just makes it look a lot more natural. Now for my third sort of color combination, I am going to be making a more yellow flower. This yellow is quite bright, but you'll see as I go in with that second marker and then I add some water, you can see it sort of tones it down a little bit. And I'm able to sort of work in between these two flowers, and I was careful so that I didn't get any color bleeding. So these are the three combinations that I'm going to be using over and over again as I complete my coloration. Sometimes there's a little bit more red in the flower, sometimes there's a little bit more brown in the flower, but you can see how it's all coming together and sort of looking really, really pretty. If there was ever any areas where I wasn't quite sure what color to do, I sort of put that dark brown in, so like it was like a center of a flower. Now I'm going to be die cutting it, so what I'm doing here is I'm just making sure that I've colored enough of the image so that when I die cut it, everything is colored. Now these are dies from Whimsy. It's their Cardmaker Die Set. So there's these two rectangular dies and they have a dot detail around them. And I'm using both of them because I'm going to sort of pop up the middle portion of the image. So you're going to see what I'm doing in a little bit. So I've die cut it, beautiful rectangle. It's sized to fit nicely on an A2 size card if you have a mat. I've also die cut some black cardstock with the smaller die. And this is what I'm going to use to pop it up. And the reason I'm not using foam adhesive is because it's white and I didn't want that to show. So you can see I have a card base here, A2 size card base. It's in gold paper. And you can see once I put this frame on, I have a nice little edge around it, which finishes off the card really nicely. And then I'm going to pop in the middle portion, and it's raised a little bit. And with the black, it's not glaring. If it had been white, it would have shown a lot more. I did also die cut the word gratitude. This is from another Whimsy die set in black and in gold. And then I die cut also that sort of tab that you see with vellum. That's also in the Cardmaker die set. And I'm going to use these to create the sentiment. The vellum just muted the colors a little bit, and it just sort of finished off the card a little bit better than just putting the die cuts right onto the center there. It just finishes it off. It just sort of grounds it a little bit. And I'm just using some glue to get everything in place. So that's my card. I hope you enjoyed watching me create it. I hope it inspires you to create one like this. So again, I really appreciate all your support. I know it's been a little bit of time since I've posted a video, but summer was busy for me. But I'm back into fall and back into full swing. If you want to see the products I use, I'm going to have them listed below this video on YouTube, or you can go over to my blog and check that out. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.